Subscribe now, because what you're about to see is unforgettable. A story of dignity, healing, and the love that finds you when you stop looking. Claire, 34, left her shift with $6 in tips, and her ex-husband's voice still in her head. No one will ever want you. She had one reason to keep going: her 8-year-old daughter. Then a cowboy in dusty boots walked in and left 4 words that changed everything. The alarm went off at 4:15 a.m. Claire Henderson didn't hit snooze. She never hit snooze. Snooze was for people who could afford to be slow in the morning, people who had backup plans and second chances and someone else to make the coffee. She had a $47.23 checking account balance, $1,100 in rent due in 6 days, and a daughter who needed breakfast before the school bus came at 7:20. She sat up. The studio above Mrs. Terrence's garage was cold in November, the kind of cold that came through the walls, not just the windows. She could see her breath. The little space heater in the corner had been working at half capacity since October, but replacing it would cost $60 she didn't have, so she'd put a second blanket on Lily's bed and kept her own shivers to herself. She padded to the kitchen in wool socks, filled the coffee pot, and listened to the percolator hiss in the dark. While the coffee brewed, she checked the school calendar on the refrigerator. Lily had a dance recital in 18 days. The costume, a white tulle thing the other girls had already ordered from the costume shop on Main, cost $85. Claire had $47.23. She'd been doing math in her head since September, arranging and rearranging the numbers like a puzzle that didn't have enough pieces. Something will come through, she told herself. She'd been telling herself that for 3 years. Something always did. Not big things. Not life-changing things. Just enough. Just barely enough. She poured 2 cups of coffee, one for herself, one for the thermos she'd take to work, and went to check on Lily. Her daughter was 8 years old and slept the way children sleep when they are entirely at peace with the world. Flat on her back, arms spread wide like she was trying to hold the whole bed. She had Claire's nose and dark lashes and her father's stubbornness, which Claire had decided to think of as determination. The wall above Lily's pillow was covered in drawings, tacked up with pieces of masking tape, horses mostly, a few mermaids, one ambitious attempt at an elephant that Lily had titled Dumbo's Cousin in red crayon. Claire stood in the doorway for exactly 30 seconds. Then she went and got ready for work. Mason's Diner sat at the corner of Route 7 and Elm in the middle of Callaway County, Texas, a town of 11,000 people, 3 stoplights, and enough gossip to fill a swimming pool. The diner had been there since 1974. The pie cases were original. The menus were laminated so many times they'd started to feel like plastic cutting boards. The coffee was terrible, and everyone ordered it anyway. Claire had been working there for 3 years, 4 days a week on the 5:30 to 2 shift and 2 days a week doubling into the 4 to 11. She made $9.50 an hour plus tips. On a good Tuesday, she walked out with $40 in her apron. On a bad one, she walked out with $11 and sore feet, and the specific kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from the body, but from holding your face perfectly neutral for 8 hours straight. She tied on her apron at 5:22, clocked in, and did a walk of the floor. 4 tables already occupied. 2 truckers at the counter, one reading a newspaper, one staring at the wall. A retired couple, the Murphys, who came in every weekday and always ordered the same thing and always tipped $3 regardless of the total, at table 2. A man she didn't recognize at table 7, hunched over a laptop, not looking up. Claire started the rounds. By 7:45, she'd served 14 tables, refilled the coffee station twice, talked a tourist through the menu with the patience of a kindergarten teacher, and made exactly $11 in tips. She stood at the service window, waiting on an order, and did the math in her head. 47.23 plus $11 was $58. 23. Rent in 6 days, $1,100. Costume in 18 days, $85. She stopped doing the math. The kitchen bell dinged. She picked up the plates and carried them out. The bell above the door rang at 8:03. Claire was reaching across table 4 to collect an empty coffee cup, and she didn't look up immediately. She'd learned not to. In 3 years of working this section, she'd learned that looking up at every sound just meant making eye contact with people who wanted something from her before she was ready to give it. But the sound of these boots made her look, not because they were loud, because they weren't. Most men who wore cowboy boots in this county wore them to be heard. The confident, deliberate clack of someone announcing themselves. These were quiet, measured, like the man wearing them had somewhere to be, and no need to make sure you knew it. He was tall, maybe 6'2", built wide through the shoulders in the way that came from actual physical work, not a gym. He wore a Stetson the color of dry sand, its brim curved and worn in a way that no amount of money could fake. That kind of wear took years of sun and habit. His jeans were clean. His shirt was a plain gray chambray rolled to the elbows. On his left wrist, half hidden by the cuff, was a watch that caught the morning light. Titanium case, no flash. The kind of watch that cost more than Claire made in 3 months. He wore it like he'd forgotten it was there. He sat at the corner table, the one with the wobble on the left leg that Ray kept promising to fix. He didn't open the menu. Claire brought it anyway. "Coffee?" she asked. "Please." He looked up. He had gray eyes, not cold gray, not dramatic gray, just the ordinary clear gray of winter sky before rain. There was something in them she couldn't name right away, like someone who had been very sad for a long time and had gotten used to it. "Cream or sugar?" "Black." She brought the coffee. He nodded, both hands around the mug, and looked out the window at Route 7 where 2 crows were fighting over something in the parking lot. She went back to her other tables. At 8:27, the bell above the door rang again. Claire felt it in her chest before she saw who it was. She'd felt it for 3 years. That particular tightening, like something small and hard lodging itself just below her sternum. Her body knew Derek Henderson before her eyes did. He walked in the way he always walked, like the floor was already grateful for his presence. He was 38, still handsome the way certain kinds of men are handsome at 38, sharper through the jaw, easier in the shoulders, the years having refined rather than softened him. He was wearing a new jacket, navy blue, tailored, the kind of jacket that said "I've arrived" without needing to shout it. He'd gotten his hair cut recently. It showed. Beside him was a woman Claire had never seen, blonde, younger, maybe 29, maybe 30, with the kind of effortless prettiness that came with good sleep and no particular weight on her shoulders. She was laughing at something Derek had said before they came through the door, and her laugh was light and easy, and it landed on Claire like a hand pushing her sideways. Derek spotted Claire immediately. She watched his face do the thing it always did, the smile that was really a smirk wearing better clothes. The faint lift of the brow that said, "Interesting. You're still exactly where I left you." He steered the blonde to table 3, Claire's section. Of course he did. Claire. He said her name the way you'd say the name of a store you used to shop at before you found better ones. "Still here, huh? What can I get you?" she asked. Her voice was even. She was proud of that. "The usual. Eggs over easy, wheat toast, extra butter." He glanced at the blonde, whose name Claire would later learn was Vanessa. She used to make better eggs at home, but that was a long time ago. He smiled. "She's better at diner eggs now. Practice, I guess." Vanessa laughed. Small, uncertain, like she wasn't sure if the joke was funny or just complicated. Claire wrote it down. Her handwriting was steady. She filled Derek's coffee first, then took Vanessa's order, a fruit cup and wheat toast, dry. She kept her face professional, polite. She'd learned to do this the way you learn to do anything difficult, by doing it until it became automatic, until the feelings moved to a part of you that was quieter and further away. She turned to go. "You know what I always said," Derek said, not quite lowering his voice, not quite raising it either, pitched just right to be heard by the tables nearby. "Some people they don't move forward. 3 years and she's still working the same shift, same diner, same—" He made a small gesture, encompassing, dismissive. Vanessa murmured something. "No, I just mean—" Derek sighed, like he was sad about it almost, like the observation pained him. "I used to say, Claire, you've got to want more for yourself, but some people don't know how to want things. They just wait and wonder why nothing changes." Claire stopped. She was 3 steps from the kitchen door. She stopped and stood still, her order pad in her hand, the sounds of the diner moving around her, the clatter of silverware, the hiss of the griddle, the low murmur of the Murphys' conversation at table 2, and she took one breath, then another. "You're not defined by the room you're standing in, baby girl." Her grandmother's voice, warm and certain from 30 years back. "You're defined by what you do next." She turned around slowly. Derek was watching her, waiting for the crack. She looked at him for 3 full seconds, long enough for it to mean something, and then she smiled. Not a small smile, a real one. "Your eggs will be up in 10 minutes, she said. "Let me know if you need anything else." She pushed through the kitchen door. At the service window, she gripped the counter with both hands and breathed. Behind her, Jose, the line cook, glanced up from the grill. He was 61 years old, had worked at Mason's for 14 years, and had seen everything this diner had to offer. He looked at Claire. He looked away. Then he said quietly, still facing the grill, "You okay?" "I'm fine," Claire said. "Okay." He flipped something on the grill. "You want I should undercook his eggs a little?" She almost laughed. "No." "Okay," he said again. And that was that. She pressed her palms flat against the cold countertop. In, out. She made Derek's eggs perfectly. She carried them out herself, set them down without a word, refilled his coffee with a steady hand. Vanessa was showing Derek something on her phone. He didn't look up when Claire set the plate down. She cleared other tables. She brought more coffee to the Murphys. She chatted with a trucker named Dale about the weather coming in from the north. She did not think about Derek or the jacket or the word pathetic or the word broken, or any of the other words he had pressed into her over 6 years of marriage like thumbtacks into a wall. She just worked. If you're still here with Claire, if you've ever kept walking when someone was waiting for you to fall, leave a like and tell me in the comments, what's the one thing that kept you going when everything else said stop? At 9:15, Derek and Vanessa finished their breakfast. Derek left a $3 tip on a 26 bill. Claire saw him do it, watched his hand hover over his wallet making the calculation and settle on 3 singles. She watched Vanessa's face do a small, uncomfortable thing, like she knew. They left. The bell above the door rang and they were gone, and the diner felt the same as it always did, warm and slightly grease-scented and full of ordinary people doing ordinary things. Claire started clearing table 3. She was stacking the plates, Derek's eggs half-eaten, Vanessa's toast barely touched when she noticed the corner table. The man in the sand-colored Stetson was gone. On the table, his $14 check weighted down with 2 crisp $100 bills, and beneath the bills, a paper cocktail napkin from the dispenser by the window. 4 words, written in pen, clean, deliberate handwriting. The kind of handwriting that meant someone had thought before they wrote. "He's wrong about you." Claire stood very still. The plates were still in her hands. She was aware of the weight of them, the faint warmth from the remnants of eggs going cold. She was aware of the sounds of the diner around her, Jose on the grill, the Murphys discussing something about their daughter's new apartment, and she was also aware of an extraordinary stillness that had moved into her chest, like water settling. She set the plates down. She picked up the napkin. She read it again. Same words, same handwriting. She looked toward the front windows. Through the glass she could see the parking lot bathed in morning November light. A dark blue pickup, not new, not showy, but solid and well kept, was pulling slowly out of the lot onto Route 7. The driver's window was rolled halfway down. She could see the brim of a hat, the line of a jaw. He didn't look back. She stood there with the napkin in her hand and felt something move in her chest that she hadn't felt in so long she almost didn't recognize it. Not hope, exactly. Not yet. But the space where hope used to live, opening up a little. Just a crack. Just enough for light to get through. Ray's voice came from behind her. "Henderson, you standing around all morning or you working?" She folded the napkin carefully, once, then again, and tucked it into the front pocket of her apron. "Working," she said. The rest of the morning shift passed the way morning shifts pass when you are running on 3 hours of sleep and gas station coffee, in a steady blur of orders and refills and small talk and small disappointments. A table of 4 construction workers who tipped $6 total, a woman who sent her omelet back twice, a child who knocked over a full glass of orange juice and cried about it until Claire crouched down and said, entirely sincerely, that she'd spilled way bigger things than that, and everything had turned out fine. The child stopped crying. Claire mopped up the orange juice. By 2, the lunch rush had thinned and she was running on momentum alone. Her feet ached, the left one more than the right. An old story. Her lower back had started its familiar complaint around noon. She'd eaten half a peanut butter sandwich in the break room at 10:45 and nothing since. She cashed out her last table, counted her tips at the back counter. $54 better than this morning. Not enough to move the needle. She changed out of her work shoes and into the sneakers she kept in her locker. Older Nikes, the left toe starting to separate from the sole, held in place by a line of super glue she'd applied 3 weeks ago. She pulled on her coat, said goodbye to Jose, who was already prepping for the dinner crew. "Same time Thursday?" he asked. "Same time Thursday," she confirmed. She pushed out the back door into the November cold and stood in the alley for a moment, tilting her face up toward the sky. It was pale white gray, the color of old linen, the kind of Texas sky that promises winter without committing to it. She took the napkin out of her apron pocket. "He's wrong about you." She read it in the alley, in the cold, standing next to the recycling bins. She read it 3 times and she still didn't know what to do with it. She didn't know if it was kindness, or pity, or some strange category in between. She didn't know what kind of man left a $200 tip and a handwritten note for a stranger. She didn't know if she was supposed to feel grateful or suspicious or both. What she knew was this. It was the first thing in a very long time that someone had said, or written or implied, that she was worth something. That was a dangerous thing to feel. She put the napkin in her coat pocket instead of her apron pocket, where it would have gotten washed. Then she walked to the bus stop. 3 buses, 46 minutes. A transfer at the Elm Street station where the heat was broken, and a man was playing a harmonica version of something that might have been Amazing Grace, or might have been something else entirely. She made it to Lily's after-school program at 4:02, 2 minutes past pickup. Mrs. Kim, who ran the program with the cheerful efficiency of a woman who'd been doing it for 22 years and had no intention of retiring, handed Claire a piece of construction paper. "She made this for you," Mrs. Kim said. Claire looked at it. A horse, drawn in brown and black crayon with 6 legs, 2 regular and then 4 arranged around the belly like an afterthought. In Lily's handwriting, in red, "This one can run faster and also jump better. His name is Roger." Claire looked up. "Roger?" She said that was the most serious name she could think of, Mrs. Kim said. Lily appeared at the end of the hallway then, her backpack straps uneven, her left pigtail coming loose, carrying a paper bag that clinked suspiciously. "I made macaroni art," she announced, "for the refrigerator." "Of course you did," Claire said. Lily looked at the drawing in her mother's hands. "Do you like Roger?" "Roger is the most serious horse I've ever seen." Lily's gap-toothed grin was the best thing Claire had seen all day, by a significant margin. That night, grilled cheese and tomato soup, the good kind, from the can, not the powder. Homework at the kitchen table, spelling words, a math worksheet about fractions that took longer than expected, a drawing assignment where Lily had to illustrate something that makes you happy, and drew, predictably, a horse. Roger again, apparently. Bath time. Lily's protest that she'd washed her hair yesterday and it was still basically clean. Claire's counter-argument that yesterday didn't count because she'd been running in the sprinkler at recess. "It was cold sprinkler," Lily said, as if this changed the equation. "Hair gets wet regardless," Claire said. Lily submitted with theatrical sighing. By 8:30 the apartment was quiet. The small space heater hummed in the corner. Outside wind moved against the windows, the north wind that had been threatening all day finally arriving. Claire sat on the edge of Lily's bed in the dark, watching her daughter breathe. Lily's chest rose and fell. The plastic stars on the ceiling glowed their faint green. Lily had found them at a garage sale for 50 cents, and insisted on putting them up herself with the step stool and a roll of tape, declaring them magic in a tone that brooked no argument. They weren't magic, they were plastic, made in a factory somewhere, adhesive weakening by the month. But in the dark they looked exactly like what Lily said they were. "Mom?" Lily's voice hovering on the edge of sleep. "Yeah, baby. Did anything good happen today?" Claire considered this. The $3 tip, Derek's voice, the cold alley, the 3 buses, and then, "He's wrong about you," written in steady, careful handwriting by a man she didn't know, pressed under $200 she hadn't earned by any measure except the simplest one, by doing her job with dignity when someone was trying to take it from her. "Yeah," she said. "Something good happened." "What?" "Someone was kind." Lily made a small sound of satisfaction. "Good," she said. "That's the best kind of something." Her breathing deepened. She was asleep in under a minute. Claire sat there a while longer. Then she went to the kitchen, took the napkin out of her coat pocket, and smoothed it flat on the table under the yellow light. "He's wrong about you." She didn't know his name. She didn't know if she'd ever see him again. She didn't know what it meant that a stranger with a sand-colored hat and a very expensive watch had bothered to say this to her, in this way, in this diner, on this particular Tuesday. What she knew was that she was going to keep it. She folded it twice and put it in the inside pocket of her purse, the small zippered one where she kept her Social Security card and a photo of her grandmother, Ruth, who had raised Claire from age 9 after Claire's mother left, who had kept a garden in Georgia, red clay that everyone said couldn't grow anything, and grown tomatoes and pole beans and 2 kinds of squash, who had said, with complete certainty, every time Claire was afraid of something, "You're not defined by the room you're standing in, baby girl. You're defined by what you do next." She zipped the pocket closed. She turned off the kitchen light. She went to bed. He came back on Thursday. Same table, same Stetson, same order, black coffee, no menu. Claire saw him the moment she pushed through the kitchen door at 5:28 a.m., 2 minutes before her shift officially started. She stopped. The door swung back and hit her shoulder. She let it. He was looking out the window at Route 7, both hands around the mug, the same posture as Tuesday, like he'd simply paused there mid-thought and hadn't gotten around to moving. She almost went back through the kitchen door. She could ask Jose to cover her section for 20 minutes, say she wasn't feeling well, wait until the man left. She didn't. She'd been doing that, avoiding, deflecting, making herself smaller to fit through spaces that shouldn't require it, for too long. She was done with small. She straightened her apron. She picked up her order pad. She walked to the corner table. "Morning," she said. He looked up, those gray eyes again, clear and quiet. "Morning." She refilled his coffee from the pot she was carrying, though it was still mostly full, a small professional gesture that gave her something to do with her hands. "Thank you," he said, "for the coffee." She nodded. He said, "I heard what he said on Tuesday." She went still. "I'm not going to pretend I didn't," he said. "I figured you'd rather know that I heard it than wonder." He paused. "And I meant what I wrote." Claire looked at him for a moment. He wasn't leaning forward, wasn't performing concern. He was just sitting, holding his mug, looking at her the way you look at something you're trying to understand without putting words to it yet. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know." He took a sip of coffee. "I did it anyway." She almost said thank you. She almost said it was too much. She almost said 6 different things, all of them inadequate. Instead, she said, "Do you want to order anything?" The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, something quieter. "I'll take whatever the pie is. Cherry today. Cherry's good." She wrote it down. His name was James Calloway. She didn't learn this directly. She learned it the way you learn things in a small-town diner, from the ambient information that floats around like pollen. The couple at table 2, the Murphys, who had lived in Calloway County for 53 years and knew everyone in it. "That's James Calloway," Mrs. Murphy told Claire when she came to refill their orange juice. She said it quietly, not unkindly, in the voice of someone providing a practical update. "Walter's boy. He runs the Calloway Ranch out on Old Highway 6 now. Been running it since his daddy passed, 7 years back." She glanced toward the corner table. "He lost his wife a few years ago. Cancer. Terrible thing." She looked back at Claire. "He doesn't come into town much." Claire processed this. The watch, the truck, the comfortable ease of a man who didn't need to prove anything because the proving had already been done. "He tips well," she said, because it was true, and because she didn't know what else to say. Mrs. Murphy gave her a look that contained several things at once. "He's a good man," she said simply. "Quiet, but good." At 9:45, Claire was refilling the coffee station behind the counter when Ray Dobbins appeared at her shoulder. Ray was her manager, 49, thickening through the middle, with the particular authority of a man who had peaked in his mid-30s and organized his life around reminding other people of that. He wore his keychain on his belt loop. He had opinions about everything and asked for none in return. Henderson. He leaned against the counter beside her in a way that put him closer than she wanted. "Talk to Danny about the schedule. I need you to pull a double Saturday." "I have plans Saturday," she said. "Cancel them. It's Lily's school thing." "A school thing isn't a reason, Henderson. I need coverage." "I'll see if I can find someone to swap," she said, which was the diplomatic version of, "I'm not canceling my daughter's event for an extra shift at $9, $50 an hour." Ray's jaw tightened. "See that you do. And another thing," he moved closer. She smelled coffee and something else, something unpleasant. "Your section's been slow this week. You've been distracted." "My section is the same as it always is," she said quietly. "I'm just saying." He shrugged. "A lot of girls would be grateful for the hours I give them." The word girls sat in the air between them. Claire kept her face neutral. She set down the coffee pot carefully because setting things down carefully was what she did when she wanted to throw them. "I'm grateful," she said. "Is there anything else?" From across the diner came a voice. Not loud, not aggressive, calm, the way something heavy and immovable is calm. "Ma'am." James Calloway was looking toward the counter. He held up his empty mug. "When you get a chance." Claire picked up the pot. Ray looked at James. James looked at Ray with the particular expression of a man who has seen worse things than Ray and is not remotely concerned. The expression lasted about 3 seconds. Then Ray straightened, adjusted his keychain and walked away, Claire brought James his coffee. He didn't say anything about what had just happened. He didn't need to. He just looked at her with those gray eyes and said, "Thank you," and went back to his pie. She stood at his table for a moment longer than was strictly necessary. "My daughter has a recital," she said. She didn't know exactly why she said it. "In 18 days. That's why I can't pull the double Saturday." He nodded. "What kind of recital?" "Dance. She's been practicing in the apartment. The ceiling fan has taken several hits." He almost smiled. She was learning what his almost smiles looked like. A shift in the eyes more than the mouth, a loosening around the jaw. "She any good?" he asked. "She's 8, Claire said. "She's incredible." This time he did smile. Brief, like sunlight through cloud, but real. Claire walked away before she could say anything else. At 11:30, a woman came in with 2 small children and a stroller that didn't fit through the tables, and a look in her eyes that Claire recognized. The look of someone operating on pure necessity. She sat the children, ordered 2 kids' meals and a coffee, and when the smaller child knocked an entire glass of milk off the table, she pressed both hands to her face for just a moment. Claire brought towels without being asked. "Don't worry about it," she said. "It happens at least 3 times a day. We keep extra towels specifically." The woman lowered her hands. She was maybe 30, 32, with dark circles and nice earrings and a jacket that had baby food on the shoulder she probably hadn't noticed yet. "Thank you," she said. It came out rough, like she'd been waiting to hear something kind. Claire nodded and cleaned up the milk and brought the children more crackers and didn't charge for the extra milk. Ray would notice and deduct it from her till. She'd deal with that later. When the woman left, she tipped $2 on a $19 bill. Everything she could afford, Claire suspected. Claire cleared the table, counted the tip, and tucked it into her pocket. At the counter, one of the regulars, Dale the trucker, said, "You're too good to that place, Claire. You know that?" "It's just milk," she said. "Not talking about the milk," he said. She didn't answer. She picked up the towels and took them to the back. Her shift ended at 2:15. She changed her shoes in the break room and counted the day's tips. $61, a Thursday record. She was still in the break room doing the math. $47. 23 plus 2 shifts of tips equaled now roughly $155 when her phone lit up on the bench beside her. Not a text, a call. Lily's school. Claire answered before the second ring. "Ms. Henderson? This is Patricia from the school office. Lily's been running a fever since about noon. We kept her in the nurse's office, but it's up to 102.4, and we really need someone to pick her up." The break room wall was very close. Claire stared at it. "I'll be there as soon as I can," she said. She hung up and calculated. 3 buses from here to the school. 47 minutes if the transfers were clean. But the 2:30 wasn't clean on Thursdays. The connection at Elm Street always ran 5 minutes late, which meant she'd miss the 3:10 and be waiting until 3:42, which meant she'd be at the school by 4:28. Lily had been feverish since noon. Claire stood up, put on her coat, grabbed her bag, and pushed through the break room door. The parking lot was half empty, cold, bright, the kind of November afternoon that looked warmer than it was. She was walking fast toward the bus stop when she heard a voice behind her. "Ms. Henderson." She turned. James Calloway was standing by his truck. Dark blue, solid, work-worn, a Calloway Ranch decal in small letters on the door. He had his hat in one hand and his phone in the other. He looked like he'd been about to get in the truck when something stopped him. "Your face," he said simply. She blinked. When you came out that door. Something's wrong." She would later wonder what she looked like in that moment. She suspected a woman standing very still in a parking lot, holding herself together with both hands, trying to decide if she was the kind of person who asked a stranger for help. She'd spent 3 years deciding she wasn't that person. "My daughter's sick at school," she said. "I don't have a car. The bus will take almost an hour." He put his hat on. He said, "Which school?" "Jefferson Elementary, but you don't have to." "Jefferson's on my way," he said, which was probably not true. Jefferson Elementary was on Maple and Old Highway 6 was north of town entirely. But he said it the way he said everything, simply, without performance. Claire stood there for 2 more seconds. "You're not defined by the room you're standing in, baby girl. You're defined by what you do next." "Thank you," she said. His truck smelled like coffee and something mechanical. Not unpleasant, just honest. The cab was clean but lived in. A paperback novel in the door pocket, a pair of work gloves on the seat, a receipt from a feed store crumpled in the cup holder. The kind of truck that was used for actually doing things. He drove without talking. She appreciated this. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of someone who knew when words were unnecessary. She texted the school. On my way. 20 minutes. She stared at her phone. 102. 4 degrees. Lily ran hot when she was sick. She always had, from the time she was an infant. But anything over 102 made Claire's chest tight in the specific primal way that only parenthood could produce. She gets sick a lot? James asked. No. Claire looked up. She's healthy, it's just… She stopped. She's my kid. There's a different math when your kid is sick. He nodded. He understood. She saw it in the set of his jaw. She didn't know yet why he understood. She would find out later. For now, they drove through Callaway County in the November afternoon light, and Claire watched the storefronts give way to smaller streets and smaller houses, and then Jefferson Elementary's brick facade. And James pulled into the circle drive with the practiced ease of someone who knew how to navigate a school pickup lane, which seemed unlikely. But here they were. I'll wait, he said. You don't have to. I'll wait, he said again, not insisting, just stating. She got out of the truck. Lily was in the nurse's office on a cot under a paper blanket, holding a small stuffed dog that had survived 4 moves and a dog attack. She was pale except for 2 hectic spots of color high on her cheeks. Her eyes were heavy. She looked up when Claire came in and her face rearranged itself into relief, the specific, profound relief of a sick child seeing their parent. It was the thing that could undo Claire completely, that look, and she felt it now in her throat and behind her eyes. Hey, Bug, she said, crouching down. My head hurts, Lily said. I know. Claire pressed her palm to Lily's forehead. Hot. Too hot. We're going to the doctor. Will there be a shot? Maybe. Lily considered this with the stoic resignation of someone who had been through worse. Okay, she said. But I want the bandage with the stars. Done. Dr. Morrison's office was 6 blocks from the school. James drove them without being asked, found a parking spot without difficulty, and sat in the waiting room with his hat in his lap while Claire carried Lily inside. The waiting room was cheerful in that deliberately cheerful way of pediatric offices. Bright primary colors, a train set in the corner, laminated pictures of cartoon animals on the walls. Lily, despite her fever, assessed it with her usual thoroughness. That giraffe's neck is too short, she informed Claire. It's a stylized giraffe, Claire said. What's stylized? It means they drew it differently on purpose. On purpose, Lily repeated, unconvinced. They were called back in 20 minutes. Dr. Morrison, efficient, kind with the manner of someone who had been doing this for 30 years and still remembered why she'd started, checked Lily's throat, ears, and temperature, and declared a significant ear infection in the left ear. Antibiotics, she said. She'll be miserable for 48 hours and then she'll be fine. Keep her home from school tomorrow and possibly Monday. Claire did the math. 2 days off school meant 2 days of emergency childcare. Mrs. Terrence could sometimes help, but she had her own appointments. Missing a work shift meant losing the pay she couldn't lose. She nodded. Okay. She paid the copay $35 from the envelope she kept for exactly these emergencies and carried Lily back to the waiting room. James was still there. He'd found an old copy of a farm magazine and appeared to be reading an article about soil pH levels with genuine attention. He looked up when they came in. His eyes went straight to Lily. Lily looked at him. Then she looked at her mother with the clear, unblinking assessment of an 8-year-old taking in new information. Mom, she said, at a volume that was meant to be quiet but wasn't. Is he the cowboy? We're in a doctor's office, Lily, Claire said. Is he the one who left the note? Lily said. Same volume. Claire felt heat move up her neck. She looked at James, who had gone very still. You read the note, Claire said. It was on the table, Lily said. I read things that are on tables. You know that about me. She looked at James. She still has it. She put it in her purse. Lily, Claire said. That's a good sign, Lily told James with the authority of someone who had read several books about human behavior. She doesn't keep things in her purse unless they're important. The zipper pocket has Grandma Ruth's photo and her social security card. James looked at Lily. Lily looked at James. Are you a real cowboy? She asked. I am, he said. Do you have a horse? 14. Lily's eyes went wide. 14 horses. She processed this. What are their names? I'll tell you if you promise not to judge the names. Lily considered this seriously. I'll try, she said. I can't promise. Some names are just bad. And James Calloway. who had, by all accounts, been quietly sad for 3 years in the way of a man who'd lost the person who made him make sense, laughed. A real laugh. Short, surprised, like it caught him off guard. Claire looked at him. He glanced at her, and she saw it. The thing in his eyes she hadn't been able to name on Tuesday. She could name it now. It was the particular look of someone who has been braced for a long time against something painful, and has just, for one unexpected moment, forgotten to brace. The pharmacy took 20 minutes. James waited in the truck. Claire filled Lily's antibiotic prescription, $27 with insurance, which left $93 in the emergency envelope, and bought a popsicle from the cooler near the register, because Lily had a fever, and popsicles were one of the few good things about being sick, and $1.50 was not going to change the math significantly. In the truck on the way home, Lily ate the popsicle with focused dedication and then fell asleep against Claire's arm before they were 3 blocks from the pharmacy. James drove carefully. Not slow, just careful, the way you drive when someone is sleeping. In the quiet, Claire looked at her daughter's face. The hectic fever color, the dark lashes against the pale cheek, the small hand curled on her lap around the popsicle stick she'd been clutching like a trophy. She asked for the bandage with the stars. Claire said softly. The nurse didn't have them, but she had ones with moons, and Lily decided moons were acceptable. James was quiet for a moment. Then, Catherine, my wife, she had a thing about the right bandages, too. His voice was even, not strained, just careful. She broke her wrist once and refused the hospital's generic bandages, made our housekeeper drive 45 minutes to a specialty pharmacy for the butterfly ones. Claire looked at him. She wasn't unreasonable, he said quickly. Just very specific about certain things. That's not unreasonable, Claire said. That's knowing what you want. He was quiet again, and then, softly, yeah. They drove the rest of the way in silence that felt, for the first time, like something shared rather than something empty. He pulled up in front of Mrs. Terrence's garage. The exterior light was on, throwing a yellow rectangle onto the concrete driveway. The wind had picked up, the north wind, serious now, carrying cold from somewhere far away. Thank you, Claire said. She meant it in the way that words sometimes carry more weight than they appear to. You didn't have to do any of this. I know, he said. The same thing he'd said about the note. She looked at him for a moment. He was looking straight ahead, through the windshield at the yellow light. His profile was clean and still, and the hat cast a shadow across part of his face that made him look, briefly, like a photograph of himself. Can I ask you something? She said. He nodded. Why? On Tuesday. A lot of people heard what he said. Nobody. She stopped. Started again. Nobody does what you did. He was quiet long enough that she thought maybe he wasn't going to answer. Then he said, My father used to say when you see something wrong and you can do something about it and you don't, that's a choice too. It's just a coward's choice. She sat with that. Good philosophy, she said finally. He was a good man, James said. Past tense. Easy and matter-of-fact the way you say things that have been true for a long time. Outside, the wind moved through the tree at the edge of the property. A live oak, old and stubborn, holding its leaves even now in November. It swayed but didn't bend. Lily stirred in Claire's arms, made a small sound, settled. I should get her inside, Claire said. Of course. She opened the truck door. Then she stopped. James. She said his name for the first time. He looked at her. Her favorite bandages are the ones with the stars. In case, she stopped. She wasn't sure what she was saying, what she was leaving space for. He looked at her for a long moment. That unguarded thing in his eyes again. That person who had, briefly, forgotten to brace. Good to know, he said. She got out with Lily in her arms. She walked up the path to the door. She was halfway there when she heard the truck, but she didn't look back. She went inside. She put Lily to bed with the moon bandage on her ear. For the warmth, she decided, and also because it looked official, and the antibiotic and a glass of water and the small stuffed dog. She sat on the edge of the bed. In the pocket of her coat, the napkin. In the inside pocket of her purse, the same napkin folded twice. She realized, transferred it without thinking. The first thing she'd done when she changed at the end of her shift was move it from her apron to her coat. And when she'd grabbed her coat in the parking lot, she'd checked, without even consciously deciding to, that it was still there. She hadn't told James that she still had it. Lily had told him. She didn't know yet whether that was a disaster or a beginning. She turned off the light. She went to the kitchen. She sat at the table and started the math again. $155 in the checking account, $2,100 due in 4 days. Lily home from school tomorrow, which meant calling Mrs. Terrence, which meant her phone buzzed. An unknown number. A text. The horse with 6 legs. Your daughter told me his name is Roger. I asked her if she'd be willing to draw a horse for me, and she said she'd consider it. I told her I'd consider it a professional commission. A pause. Then another text. My name is James, in case she didn't tell you. James Calloway. Then, I hope she feels better. Claire set the phone down on the table. She looked at the ceiling. From Lily's room, small and clear through the thin apartment walls, came the sound of steady breathing. She picked up the phone. She typed, "She already told me," about the names. "How many of your 14 horses have bad names?" His answer came in 30 seconds. Most of them. And then, all of them, honestly. She pressed her lips together against something that felt dangerously close to a smile. Outside, the north wind moved against the windows. The space heater hummed. The night was cold and the math didn't add up, and Lily had a 102-degree fever and rent was due in 4 days. None of that had changed. But something else had. Somewhere between the corner table and the pediatrician's waiting room and a 6-legged horse named Roger. Something small, but real. She put the phone down and started for the first time to believe it. Lily's fever broke Friday morning, dropping from a 102.4 to 99.1 overnight, then settling to a respectable 98.7 by noon. She was still pale and slow-moving and required what she called bed privileges, which meant the laptop, control of the remote, and access to the emergency granola bars Claire kept in the cabinet above the refrigerator. But she was coherent and hungry, which Claire had learned were the 2 reliable signs that the worst was over. Claire called in to Mason's. Ray answered. "Can't do it," he said before she'd finished explaining. "I've got 3 people out already." "My daughter has an ear infection," Claire said. "She's home from school. Not my problem, Henderson. I have 4 years of showing up on time, Ray. 4 years without calling in sick once." A pause. The particular pause of a man who knew she was right but resented it. "Fine," he said. "One day. But I'm docking the Saturday double coverage request. You pull it or you don't. But don't come asking me for schedule flexibility." She hung up. She sat at the kitchen table and did the math for the 11th time that week. The numbers had not improved. She had $155 in her account, $1,100 due in 3 days, a sick child at home, and a lost shift that would cost her approximately $76 in wages plus tips. She opened her laptop. Not for anything specific, just to look at the problem from a different angle, which was something her grandmother had always recommended. When you can't solve something standing still, start moving. She looked at her budget. She looked at her take-home average. She looked at the overtime the waitstaff sometimes picked up at Mason's on weekends. She opened the school district's emergency fund application. She'd found out about it 6 months ago and had been too proud to apply. She looked at it now. Income threshold, $38,000 annually. She made $27,800. She qualified. She looked at it for a long time. Asking for help isn't weakness, her grandmother had said. Refusing help because you're afraid of what it means is. She started filling it out. At 10:30, Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway in her pajamas. The purple ones with the stars, slightly too small now, the cuffs ending 2 inches above her wrists. She was holding Roger the 6-legged horse drawing, which she'd taken down from the wall. "I'm going to make Mr. Calloway a better Roger," she announced. "A better Roger," Claire said. "The proportions on that one are wrong." She held up the original critically. "The legs should be longer and Roger deserves a saddle." "Does he? Professional horses have saddles." She sat at the table, set the original aside, and pulled Claire's notepad toward her. "Also, I was thinking, 14 horses is a lot of horses for one person." "It is," Claire agreed. "He must be lonely." Claire looked at her daughter. "That's a big conclusion from he has 14 horses," she said carefully. Lily looked up. Claire had long known, a particular quality of perception that was either a gift or a tactical advantage depending on the situation. She'd had it since she was 3, when she'd informed a dinner party guest, Derek's colleague, who'd spent the evening being ostentatiously charming, "You don't really like us. You're just being polite because you want something from Daddy." Derek had been mortified. The guest had been silent. Claire had been secretly proud. "He laughed at my horse joke," Lily said now. "But then he looked—" She tilted her head, sad about the laughing, like he forgot he was allowed to. Claire was quiet. "Mom?" Lily said, with the directness that apparently came pre-installed in her. Are you going to be his friend? I don't know, Claire said. I barely know him. But you kept the note. You told him about the note. Because you keeping it was important information, Lily said, with no apparent sense of having done anything unusual. Important information should be shared. Not always, Claire said. Usually, Lily said. She turned back to her notepad and began drawing. I'm going to give Roger wings too, as a bonus. He's a flying six-legged horse? He can do lots of things, Lily said. He's Roger. James texted at 11. How's the patient? Claire looked at it for a moment. Then she typed back. Fever's down. Currently engineering a superior horse. Better proportions? Wings. He's getting wings. Roger deserves wings. She smiled at her phone in the kitchen with the weak November light coming through the window and the space heater humming, and Lily at the table with her tongue between her teeth in concentration. Then James sent another message. I know this is forward, but I'm making a run to town this afternoon, hardware store on Main. If you needed anything at the pharmacy, for Lily, I could drop it off, or not. It's an offer, not an obligation. She read it twice. Not an obligation was doing a lot of work in that sentence. It was the sentence of a man who understood that unsolicited help felt like charity, and charity felt like pity, and pity was the one thing she couldn't accept. She typed, We're okay on supplies, but thank you. Then, before she could stop herself, coffee though, if you're near a gas station. The good kind, not the powder. A pause. Then, I'll bring the good kind. He arrived at Tuzang, which was late enough to be deliberate and early enough to be polite, with a small paper bag from the coffee shop on Elm, not a gas station, but she didn't comment, and a paper cup with a lid that had her name written on it in someone else's handwriting. He stood in the doorway because she hadn't quite committed to inviting him in. He didn't push. Lily's resting, Claire said. She wore herself out making your horse. I heard there were wings involved. And a saddle. The saddle took 40 minutes. There's a lot of detail on that saddle. She took the coffee. It was real coffee from a real machine. Probably the best thing she'd tasted in 2 weeks. She drank it in the doorway and felt the warmth of it move through her chest. You don't have to stand out here, she said. He came in. The apartment was small. She was always aware of that in a specific way when someone new entered it. The living room-kitchen combination. The 2 small bedrooms. The bathroom with the towel bar that had been coming loose for 3 months. The second-hand couch she'd reupholstered herself with fabric from the craft store, using a YouTube tutorial she'd watched 11 times before she got it right. James looked around without commenting on any of this. His eyes moved over the drawings on the walls. Lily's gallery extended from her bedroom into the living room, a full exhibit of horses and mermaids, and one extremely ambitious attempt at a train. He looked at the bookshelf, the photo on the windowsill, the small cactus on the counter that had survived 3 apartments and what Claire privately considered to be miraculous odds. He didn't look like a man taking inventory. He looked like a man paying attention. Sit, she said, if you want. He sat on the reupholstered couch. It held. She sat in the chair across from it and held her coffee with both hands. Tell me about Catherine, she said. She said it before she'd decided to. She wasn't sure why. Maybe because Lily's observation, he forgot he was allowed to laugh, had stayed with her. Maybe because she'd been alone with a grief of her own for long enough to recognize someone else's. He was quiet for a moment. He stopped. Started again. She laughed at everything. It was the first thing I noticed about her. We were at a cattle auction. She was there with her father, who was in the business, and something went wrong with the PA system and it started playing country music at full volume in the middle of a bid call, and everyone was embarrassed except her. She just laughed. He looked at his hands. She had the kind of laugh that made the room feel bigger. Claire didn't say I'm sorry. She'd been on the receiving end of I'm sorry enough to know it closed a door instead of opening one. How long were you married? She asked. 9 years. She got sick in year 8. He was still looking at his hands. It was fast. 14 months from diagnosis. 14 months. He stopped again. Looked up at the window. She never complained. Not once. Which sounds like something people say, but I mean it. She was angry sometimes. Scared sometimes. But she didn't. He made a small motion with one hand. She didn't collapse. She kept being Catherine. Claire looked at him. She sounds like a remarkable person, she said. She was. He looked at Claire directly. She would have liked you. The words landed simply, without decoration. "You don't know me," Claire said. "I know enough," he said. "I watched you serve a man who was trying to humiliate you, and you didn't let him. I watched you carry your daughter out of a doctor's office like she was the most important thing in the world, which she is." He paused. "And I watched you reupholster that couch." She blinked. "What?" "The pattern on the fabric. You can tell it's been redone. The piping's slightly different from what would have come with a couch that size. It's good work. The corners are clean." She stared at him. "I restored Catherine's family's farmhouse," he said simply. "I noticed woodwork and upholstery." She looked at the couch, then at him. Then she said, slightly despite herself, "I watched the tutorial 11 times. Something in his face shifted, that loosening around the jaw again. "It shows," he said, in a good way. Lily appeared in the hallway at 2:47. She was still in the purple pajamas. She was carrying the new Roger, the version with wings and a detailed saddle, mounted on a separate piece of paper from the original because wings required more space. She stopped when she saw James. She assessed the situation with efficient precision. "You came," she said. "I did," he said. "Mom said you were bringing coffee. I did that too." Lily looked at the 2 cups, still in their holders. "Did you bring a third one for me?" "Lily," Claire said. "She's 8, James said mildly. "She can't have coffee." "Technically correct," Lily said in a tone that suggested she disagreed with the policy. "But I was going to ask for hot chocolate." "Next time," James said. "Next time" sat in the air of the small apartment. Lily filed it away with the precision of an 8-year-old who notices everything. She crossed the room and presented the drawing to James. He took it with both hands, which she'd apparently been hoping for, because she visibly approved. He looked at it for a long time. Roger Mark II was better than the original by any measure. The proportions were considered. The saddle was intricate for a crayon drawing, and the wings were feathered in a way that suggested genuine aerodynamic research. He had a kind eye and what appeared to be a determined expression. "He looks serious," James said. "He is serious," Lily said. "He's Roger." James turned the drawing over. He looked at the back, Lily's signature in her careful 8-year-old handwriting, Lily H. age 8, professional art. He looked at Lily. "Can I frame this?" Lily regarded him with the expression of a person who was very pleased but was not going to let that show immediately. "It would need a good frame," she said. "One of the real ones. Not the plastic kind." "Agreed," he said. "Oak," she said. "Or cherry. I saw some in Mrs. Murphy's house and they were nice." "Oak or cherry," he confirmed, as though they were negotiating a contract. Lily nodded, satisfied. She looked at her mother. She looked at James. She said, "I'm going back to bed now," and walked back down the hallway with the serenity of someone who had accomplished her primary objective. After she was gone, the apartment was quiet again. James was still holding the drawing. He shook his head slowly. "I know," Claire said. "No, I mean," he looked up, and this time the gray eyes weren't quiet. They were something else, something a little raw. "Catherine and I wanted kids. We talked about it for years. And then," he looked back at the drawing, "and then there wasn't time. The silence between them had texture now, the kind that only comes when 2 people have both been in the dark and recognize that in each other." "I'm sorry," Claire said, and she meant it in all the ways that phrase usually couldn't hold. He nodded. "Derek said she was a mistake," she said then, before she decided to say it. "Lily. He said she was the mistake that complicated everything." She looked at her coffee cup. "He said it once, but he said it in front of her. She was 4. She didn't. I don't think she understood." She paused. She definitely understood. James was very still. 3 years later," Claire continued, "she still introduces herself with her full name, Lily Henderson, like she's claiming it." She looked up. "Like she knows someone might try to take it from her and she's making sure they can't." "She gets that from you," James said. Claire shook her head. "She does," he said. "That's the thing you do. You hold your name with both hands. I saw it on Tuesday. Derek was trying to make you less and you just stood there, taller, like he couldn't reach you." Claire looked at him for a long moment. "I didn't feel tall," she said. "I felt like I was standing on a ledge." "That's the same thing," he said. "Sometimes." He left at 4 o'clock. He had horses to feed, he said. All 14 of them, including 3 who were particular about timing and would make their feelings known with significant volume. At the door, he paused. "I know you said no to the ride the other night," he said. "And I know you said no to the pharmacy. I'm not..." He stopped. Started again. I'm not trying to fix anything, Claire. I know that's not what you need. What do you think I need? She asked. He thought about it. Someone who shows up, he said finally, and means it. She looked at him. He looked at her. Maybe Thursday, she said. Coffee again if you're in town. He put his hat on. I'm usually in town Thursdays, he said, which she suspected was not an accident but chose not to examine too closely. He went down the path to his truck. She stood in the doorway and watched the live oak move in the wind. He got in the truck. He started the engine. He drove away, and she noticed this time that she'd been watching for whether he would look back. She noticed, too, that she didn't feel like she was standing on a ledge anymore. She went inside. She checked on Lily, who was asleep again. The improved Roger hung on the wall above her bed with fresh tape. She went back to the kitchen and sat with her coffee, which had gone cold but was still better than the station powder. Her phone buzzed. A text. Not from James. A different number. A number she recognized from 2 years ago, from when she'd had to deal with lawyers and paperwork and all the sharp-edged business of ending a marriage. The text read, "This is Marianne Cross, attorney at law. I've been retained by Derek Henderson regarding a modification of custody arrangements for Lily Henderson. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience regarding—" The message went on. Claire set the phone on the table. She read it again. Outside, the wind moved against the windows and the apartment was very quiet. And in Lily's room, the plastic stars were glowing their faint green. And somewhere outside of town, James Calloway was driving back to his ranch with a drawing of a 6-legged flying horse with a detailed saddle in the seat beside him. Claire pressed both palms flat on the table. You're not defined by the room you're standing in, baby girl. She picked up the phone. She opened the message again. She read it all the way through this time, word by word, the way you read something that is trying to take something from you. Then she put the phone face down and made a list, not of her fears, of her facts. She had 150 fires. She had Lily, home and safe and getting better, who signed her own name like she knew what it was worth. She had a drawing on a wall. She had a note in her purse. And she was starting to believe, someone who showed up and meant it. It wasn't nothing. It was, in fact. She thought of her grandmother, of red clay and tomatoes and impossible gardens. A kind of beginning. She picked up the phone. She started to make calls. The letter from Marianne Cross's office arrived on a Monday. Not a text this time. An actual letter, in a cream-colored envelope with a return address in Dallas, printed in a font that cost money to choose. Claire found it in the mailbox at 7:04 a.m., on her way to the bus stop, and she stood in the cold November morning and read it twice before she put it in her bag. The language was careful, legal. It said modification of existing custody arrangement and material change in circumstances and best interests of the minor child. It said Derek was seeking to increase his parenting time from the current 2 weekends per month to a 50-50 split. It referenced his new residence, his new employment position, his new capacity to provide. It did not mention Vanessa. It did not mention the $3 tip on a 26 bill. Claire folded it, tucked it in the same inside pocket where she kept the napkin. The napkin and the letter, side by side. She didn't know what to make of that. She walked to the bus stop. She had a 5:30 shift to get to. At the diner, she worked with the precision of someone who cannot afford to let the inside show on the outside. Tables cleared, coffee refilled, orders taken and delivered with the mechanical accuracy of a person whose hands know what to do, while the mind is somewhere else entirely. By 9, she had run the numbers 14 times in her head. Legal representation cost money she didn't have. Filing fees cost money. Court costs cost money. And Derek had a Dallas attorney who worked out of an office with cream-colored envelopes, which told her everything she needed to know about where that was going. At 9:15, Ray appeared at her shoulder. "You hear me?" he said. She hadn't. "Sorry." "Say it again." "I said the Hendersons are here." He said it the way you'd say the health inspector's here or there's a problem in the kitchen. A flat, preemptive warning. She looked up. Derek and Vanessa. Table 3 again. Of course. This time, Vanessa looked less comfortable. She was sitting with her shoulders pulled slightly in, the posture of someone who wasn't sure she wanted to be where she was. Derek was on his phone. He hadn't looked up yet. Claire smoothed her apron. She walked to the table. "Morning," she said. Derek looked up from his phone. His eyes moved over her face with the quick, clinical precision of someone assessing damage. He found none and looked faintly disappointed. "Claire." He put the phone down. "Did you get the letter?" "I got it," she said. "Good." He picked up the menu, though he never actually read it. We should talk about it. Civilly. There's no reason for this to be. Do you know what you'd like to order? He stopped. Vanessa looked at the table. Claire, we have the regular menu, Claire said. And today's special is the Country Benedict. 2 poached eggs, Canadian bacon, house-made hollandaise. Comes with a side of hash browns or fresh fruit. Derek looked at her with the flat, cold attention of someone who has just realized a tactic isn't working. He set the menu down. The usual, he said. And you? Claire turned to Vanessa. Vanessa looked up. She had the eyes of someone who was embarrassed by where she was. Just coffee and wheat toast dry. Of course. Claire wrote it down. I'll have that right out. She walked to the kitchen. Behind her she heard Derek say something low and hard. The syllables clipped. She didn't hear what it was. She didn't need to. At the service window, she waited for Jose to start the eggs. Him again, Jose said. Not a question. Him again, she confirmed. He was quiet. He flipped something on the grill. He said without looking at her, I heard you got a letter from a lawyer. She looked at him. He looked at the grill. Small town, she said. Very small, he agreed. My cousin is the paralegal at Morrison and Webb. They do family law in the county. He adjusted the heat. She says free consultations on Tuesdays at noon. Just so you know. She stood at the window and looked at his back for a moment. Thank you, Jose, she said. I don't know what you're thanking me for, he said. I'm just talking about my cousin. At 10:50, James came in. She saw him through the window before the doorbell rang. The dark blue truck in the parking lot. The deliberate way he moved getting out of it. Unhurried and unhurried in the way of a man whose days are shaped by things that don't rush. Cattle and weather and land. He came through the door. He took the corner table. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second before she turned back to her other section. That was enough. In 6 days, 2 coffee conversations, 1 doctor's office waiting room, 1 apartment doorway. She had become precisely calibrated to the particular weight of his attention. It didn't press, it didn't ask. It was simply there, like something solid at the edge of a room you learn to navigate by. She brought him coffee. She was turning to go when he said quietly, You okay? Define okay, she said, just as quietly. He looked at her for a moment, then, just as quietly, Derek. She nodded once. He got a lawyer. James was still. Custody? Modification. She glanced toward table 3 where Derek was back on his phone and Vanessa was staring at her toast. 50-50. James turned his coffee mug in his hands. Once, twice. A slow, deliberate motion. You need a lawyer, he said. I know. There's one in Austin who does family law, Thomas Reed, he's good. He did some work for me when, he stopped. When Catherine died, estate stuff, he's thorough. I can't afford a Dallas-level lawyer, she said. Tom's not in Dallas, James said, and he owes me a call. She looked at him. Not charity, he said immediately. He'll do a consultation. After that, you decide. She held the coffee pot and looked at him and thought about what it cost her to say yes to something. The particular pride that lived just under her sternum, that had kept her upright for 3 years, that said, I don't need it. I can do it myself. I got this far alone. That pride had served her. But pride, she was learning, could also be a wall you built so high you forgot you were living inside it. Okay, she said. He nodded. He looked out the window. Across the diner, Derek had looked up from his phone. He was watching Claire and James with the expression of a man who has just noticed something he didn't expect and is not sure what to do with it. Claire turned away. She refilled the Murphy's coffee. She chatted with Dale at the counter about the weather. She delivered Derek's eggs with the same professional precision as always, set the plate down without a word, walked away. She felt Derek watching her leave. She walked steadily, head up, each step a decision. Thomas Reed called that afternoon at 3:15. He had the voice of someone who had been in courtrooms long enough to be genuinely unimpressed by most things, and that quality extended to his questions, which were precise and unemotional, and went directly to the relevant facts. He asked about the divorce agreement. He asked about the current custody schedule. He asked about Derek's stated grounds for modification. He was silent for a moment after she answered. Here's what I can tell you from what you've described, he said. A modification request requires proof of material change in circumstances. His getting a new job and new apartment is a weak argument. Courts don't typically favor modifications that disrupt a stable arrangement for the child, especially when the child is thriving. He paused. Is Lily thriving? Her teacher says she's one of the most curious kids she's ever taught, Claire said. She has straight A's and she draws horses with 6 legs on purpose. A brief silence. That's good, he said. Document everything. Lily's grades, her school attendance, medical records, after-school program enrollment, evidence of stable routine. I'll look at what you have and get back to you with options. I can't pay Dallas rates, she said. James told me, he said. We'll work something out. People who take care of people deserve to be taken care of. That's my personal policy. She hung up and sat at the kitchen table for a long moment. Then she opened a new notebook, the spare one she'd bought for Lily and not given her yet, still with its plastic wrap on, and she started making a list. Everything she had, everything she'd done, every school pickup, every doctor's appointment, every fever, every drawing on the wall, every bedtime story, every Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday and Sunday and all the ordinary days that added up to a life built around one small, extraordinary person. She wrote for 40 minutes. She filled 7 pages. Lily came home from school on Wednesday with a permission slip for the field trip to the Natural History Museum and a painting she'd made in art class. Large format, tempera on paper, 4 figures in a field, a woman with dark hair and an apron, a small girl with pigtails, a tall figure in a hat, and in the corner, 1 horse, 6 legs, wings, a saddle with what appeared to be extensive buckle detail. Who are they? Claire asked, though she could see well enough. It's us, Lily said, and Mr. Calloway, and Roger. She pointed to the hatted figure. He's visiting, in the painting. Is that okay? It's your painting, Claire said. But is it okay with you? Claire looked at the 4 figures in the field, the horse with his wings spread wide, the particular certainty of a child who had drawn this scene because to her it was simply true. Yeah, Bug, she said. It's okay with me. Lily nodded, satisfied. I'm going to give it to him, she said. Along with the commission. He already got the commission. This is a bonus commission, Lily said, for being nice. Thursday afternoon, James came by with hot chocolate, 3 cups in a paper carrier. 1 for Claire, 1 for Lily, 1, he said, for Mrs. Terrence downstairs, because he'd learned in the past week that Mrs. Terrence was the person who kept the whole operation running, and that deserved acknowledgement. Claire opened the door and looked at the 3 cups, and then at him. You brought Mrs. Terrence hot chocolate, she said. She's been watching Lily when you work, he said. That matters. Mrs. Terrence, 67, retired school teacher, with the moral seriousness of someone who had spent 30 years shaping small humans, received the hot chocolate at her door with a look of frank assessment. She looked at James. She looked at Claire. She looked at the cups. Well, she said, come in and have a proper cup then, not that paper thing. And somehow, in the way of certain afternoons in November, James ended up at Mrs. Terrence's kitchen table drinking real coffee from a real cup, while Mrs. Terrence questioned him about his ranch, his family history, his views on public education and the current state of the county school board, and his intentions, which she addressed directly and without apology. What do you want here? She asked, not unkindly. Clearly, James held his coffee cup. He didn't look thrown. I'm not sure yet, he said. But I'm not going anywhere. Mrs. Terrence looked at him for a long time. She had the eyes of someone who had identified every variety of dishonesty across 30 years of teaching and could not be easily fooled. All right, she said, and refilled his cup. It was later that evening, Lily in bed, the apartment quiet, the space heater doing its limited best, when Claire's phone showed a text from an unknown number she recognized from context immediately. Derek, I saw you at the diner with him. Calloway. Just want you to know the lawyers will be looking at your living situation. 1 bedroom with a kid. Garage apartment. Might want to think about what that looks like in court. She read it 3 times. The old feeling came. The one she used to live inside. The one that said he's right. You're not enough. The room you're in defines you. She felt it move through her chest like cold water. She set the phone face down. She picked up the notebook with 7 pages of evidence of her daughter's thriving life. She picked up the notebook, and she thought about a man who brought 3 hot chocolates because 3 people mattered. She thought about a woman drawing tomatoes from red clay that everyone said couldn't grow anything. She turned the phone back over. She didn't answer Derek's text. She typed a different message, to Thomas Reed's number. He started texting. I'll screenshot and send them to you tonight. Reed's response came in 4 minutes. Perfect. Save everything. That's exactly what we need. She plugged her phone in. She went to bed. She lay in the dark and listened to the wind and the space heater, and the sound of Lily breathing down the hall. You're not defined by the room you're standing in. The room was small and cold, and the math didn't add up, and a man in Dallas was trying to take something from her. She was still here. She closed her eyes. She slept. The recital was on a Saturday, not the school board Saturday, not the doubled shift Saturday Ray had been threatening. The actual, circled on the calendar, Lily had been practicing for 6 weeks Saturday. Claire had arranged everything with the precision of someone who'd learned that arrangements could fall apart in an instant, and therefore built in every possible reinforcement. Mrs. Terrence would take Lily to the school at 4 for the warm-up and costume check. Claire would finish her morning shift. She'd agreed to come in at 5:30 and cover through noon, which gave her 3 hours before Lily needed to be there, and 2 hours before she needed to be at the school herself. The costume, she'd solved the $85 problem at the last minute the way she solved most problems. Creatively, and at midnight. She'd found the white tulle fabric at the craft store for $22, watched 4 more YouTube tutorials, and made it herself over 3 nights after Lily went to sleep. It wasn't exactly what the other girls had, but it was made by her mother's hands, and Lily, when she tried it on, had said simply, "It's perfect," in the voice of someone who meant it entirely. Ray had tried one more time to get her to stay for the afternoon. She'd told him with complete and pleasant clarity that she would be leaving at noon, that this had been agreed upon in writing, and that if he had concerns about coverage he was welcome to address them with the regional manager, whose number she had. He hadn't called the regional manager. She left at noon. The recital was at Jefferson Elementary's gymnasium, transformed with the particular optimism of school parents and a folding table committee into something that resembled a performance venue. Blue crepe paper streamers, a borrowed spotlight, 57 folding chairs set in rows, a hand-lettered banner that said, "Fall Showcase," in the careful all caps of someone who had taken the job seriously. The room smelled like floor wax and popcorn from the concession stand near the door. Claire found a seat in the 3rd row. She had her phone charged, her camera ready, and a small handmade sign Lily had asked her to bring. Glitter and cardboard with Lily Henderson in pink letters, because Lily had seen a video of concert crowds and decided that was a normal thing to expect at a dance recital. She was holding the sign and reviewing the program when someone sat in the empty seat to her right. She looked up. James Calloway. He was in a clean shirt, dark blue, no hat, and holding a bouquet of yellow flowers, the kind from the grocery store, wrapped in cellophane that he clearly had no idea what to do with. He looked slightly uncertain about the flowers, which was the first time she'd ever seen him look uncertain about anything. "You came," she said. "Lily texted me the time," he said. Then, at Claire's expression, "She got my number from your phone, while you were in the bathroom on Thursday." Claire opened her mouth, closed it. She was very thorough," he said. "She sent me the location, the start time, the dress code. She said semi-formal or smart casual, and a note that said, and I'm quoting, 'The flowers should be yellow because those are the happy kind.'" Claire looked at the yellow flowers. She looked at James. Something moved in her chest that she couldn't entirely contain. She pressed her lips together against it and looked back at the program. "Semi-formal or smart casual," she said. "I went with the shirt," he said. "It's a good shirt," she said. He sat back. He looked around the gymnasium with the calm, taking-in manner he always had, as if new rooms were interesting rather than overwhelming. "How many kids are in this thing?" 22. "Lily's in the 3rd group. She's the one in the white dress." Claire paused. "I made it." He looked at her sideways. "The corners are clean?" "The corners are impeccable." The lights dimmed. A teacher who had the exhausted but game energy of someone who'd been preparing for this for 8 weeks stepped to the front and welcomed everyone, and the first group came out. Lily's group was 3rd. 7 8-year-olds in white dresses with varying degrees of hair staying put, in a line that was almost straight. They had been rehearsing a piece to a song Claire knew well from the apartment. It had played from the small Bluetooth speaker in Lily's room approximately 400 times in the past 6 weeks, to the point where Claire could now hum it without thinking. Lily came out in the middle of the line. She spotted Claire in the 3rd row immediately, found her with the accuracy of a person who always knows exactly where their person is. She saw the glitter sign. Her face went incandescent. Then she saw James beside Claire. She looked at him. She looked at her mother. She looked back at James. Then, with 8-year-old discretion, which was to say none at all, she gave a small, decisive nod, like she'd arranged something and it had gone according to plan, which Claire realized she had. The music started. The 7 8-year-olds danced. They were not technically perfect, One girl was perpetually half a beat ahead, and one was perpetually half a beat behind, and Lily was occasionally very much in her own world, but they were earnest and entirely present, and the gymnasium was full of parents holding phones aloft, and the light fell on them in a way that made everything seem possible, the way the right light always does. Claire watched her daughter dance. She pressed the glitter sign to her chest instead of holding it up, because she needed both hands free, one gripping the armrest, one pressed to her mouth, for reasons she would not explain to anyone. Beside her, James was very still. She glanced at him. He was watching Lily with an expression she hadn't seen on him before. Not the almost smile, not the guarded quiet. Something more open than that. Something that might have been grief and joy at the exact same time, layered together the way colors are when they're not quite mixed. His jaw was tight. His eyes were bright. He looked for one unguarded moment like a man who was feeling too many things and had run out of the energy it took to not feel them. She looked away. She looked at her daughter, finishing the dance, landing the last turn with her arms out and her chin up and the white tulle spinning, and the gymnasium erupted in the enthusiastic applause of 57 people who were entirely invested. Lily found Claire in the crowd again. She pointed at her, which was not in the choreography but was entirely in character. Claire held up the glitter sign. After the recital, in the hallway outside the gymnasium, Lily received the yellow flowers from James with the gravity of a person accepting an award, and then informed him that she had something for him in return. She produced from her dance bag a folded piece of paper, the 4 figures in a field painting, the bonus commission, the one with Roger and his wings. James took it with both hands. He unfolded it carefully. He looked at it for a long time. The woman with the apron, the small girl, the figure in the hat, the winged horse with his detailed saddle. "That's you," Lily said, pointing to the hatted figure. "I made sure your hat was accurate. I looked at it a lot." "It's very accurate," he said. His voice was slightly different, steadier than usual, in the way you make your voice steady when something is trying to pull it loose. "You're visiting in the painting," Lily said. "But in real life, I think maybe you could stay." The hallway noise moved around them. Other families, other children, the chaos of coats and programs and someone's lost shoe. In the middle of it, a small girl in white tow looked at a man in a clean blue shirt and said the thing that adults spent months working up to saying in 100 careful words. James looked at Lily. He looked at Claire. Claire looked at him. She felt the color in her face, but she didn't look away. "I'd like that," he said, quietly, simply, to both of them. Lily considered this and then held out her hand formally for a handshake. He shook it. She seemed satisfied. It was 7:30 by the time they left the school. Lily had eaten 2 pieces of recital cake and was operating on the specific energy of a child who has done something important and knows it. James had carried her dance bag and the yellow flowers and the program she'd signed, her name in red crayon with a star after it, and done all of this without being asked. In the parking lot, Lily made her argument for hot chocolate on the way home. "There's a diner on Elm," she said. "It's not Mason's, so there's no conflict of interest." "I've thought about this." "Conflict of interest," Claire said. "Mom works at Mason's," Lily explained to James with the patience of an 8-year-old explaining something to someone who should probably know it. "So if we go to Mason's, she has to work. We want her to not work tonight." "You've thought about this," James said. "I think about a lot of things," Lily said. The diner on Elm had a corner booth and hot chocolate with whipped cream, and Lily talked for 45 minutes without significant pause, which James sustained with what Claire was beginning to understand was not patience exactly. It wasn't an effort, but genuine interest. He asked follow-up questions, real ones. He wanted to know about Roger's wings. Aerodynamic research, Lily explained, though she'd mostly guessed. He wanted to know about the dance routine. It had a very tricky part in the middle, Lily confirmed, but she'd practiced it specifically because it was tricky. He wanted to know about her plans for the rest of elementary school. "I'm going to learn Spanish," Lily said, "and study horses, the real kind, not just drawing them." "I have 14 horses," James said. Lily looked at him. "I know," she said. "I've been thinking about that." "Have you?" he said. "Are any of them the kind that children could ride?" she asked, in a supervised context. Claire put her hand over her mouth. "2 of them," James said. "Sugar and Clover, they're both very patient." "Patient is important," Lily said seriously. "I'm still learning." "Everyone is," he said. Later, Lily asleep in the back seat, the yellow flowers on the seat beside her, the painting folded carefully in the dance bag. James pulled up in front of the garage apartment. He cut the engine but didn't move to get out. Neither did Claire. The night was cold and clear in the specific way of Texas November. The stars very sharp, the air still, the dark pressing comfortably against the windows. She asked me to stay, James said. In the painting. She does that, Claire said. Makes decisions and presents them as complete. Good quality, he said, depending on the decision. He was quiet for a moment, looking at the windshield. She could see his reflection in the dark glass, the profile, the jaw, the stillness. When Catherine died, he said, I thought I was done. Not in a dark way, just finished. Like the chapter was over and I was going to read the same page for whatever time I had left. He paused. I came to Mason's on Tuesday because my truck needed a part, and the supplier is across the street and I stop there when I'm in town. I wasn't looking for anything. Neither was I, she said. I know. He turned to look at her. That's why I believed it. The apartment windows above were dark. Mrs. Terrence had left the porch light on. The live oak moved slightly. One of the stars was a plane moving slow and steady from one edge of the sky toward the other. James, she said. She said it the way she'd said it in the parking lot that first time. His name, as a complete thought. Yeah, he said. She didn't say the rest of what she was thinking. She didn't have the exact words for it yet, for what it was like to stand at the edge of something after 3 years of standing back from all edges. The specific, terrifying aliveness of it. She didn't need to say it. He was looking at her with those gray eyes that didn't press or ask, just looked, just saw, and she thought, this is the thing. This is the thing I forgot was possible, being seen without it costing anything. She reached across the console and put her hand over his where it rested on the gear shift. He turned his hand over. His palm closed around hers. Her hand was calloused from years of plates and pots and mop handles and craft store fabric and 100 tasks done without help. His was calloused from different work, different years, different weight carried. They fit. They sat like that for a moment. Not long, not short, long enough. Good night, she said. Good night, Claire. She got out. She got Lily from the back seat, still asleep, soft and warm and smelling like cake and that particular shampoo, and carried her up the path. At the door, she turned back. He was still there. He waited until she was inside. She heard the truck engine start, pull away slowly, go quiet. She put Lily to bed. She went to the kitchen. She sat at the table for a while in the dark, her hand still warm from his. Then her phone lit up. Not James. Not Reed. Derek. I heard you had company at the recital. Looking forward to discussing that with my attorney. She read it. She set the phone down. She picked it up again. She didn't answer. She went to bed. The call from Marianne Cross's office came on a Monday at 10:17 a.m., while Claire was midway through the morning rush at Mason's. She let it go to voicemail. She called Reed from the break room at 11:45. They've filed, Reed told her. Formally. Hearings in 3 weeks. She sat on the metal folding chair in the break room. The walls were the color of old mustard. The calendar above the sink was from 2 years ago. No one had ever changed it. What do we do? She asked. We show up with everything we have, he said. The evidence of Lily's stability. School records, medical records, testimony if possible. Teachers, pediatrician, anyone who can speak to the quality of care she's received. He paused. How's the living situation? Small, she said, but stable. How long have you been at that address? 2.5 years. Good. Consistency is good. He paused again. I have to tell you something honestly. Derek's team is going to try to argue that your financial situation represents an instability risk. The number they'll focus on is the income difference. He makes more money, she said. A lot more, and they'll use it. Reed's voice was steady, practical. But here's what they can't argue. Lily's thriving. Her records are excellent. You've maintained a consistent home. You've provided consistent care. Money can buy a lot of things. It can't manufacture 3 years of showing up. He paused. Claire, this is winnable. She held the phone. Winnable. She thought about the notebook with 7 pages. She thought about the drawing on the wall. She thought about a dance recital in a borrowed spotlight, and a small girl who signed her own name with a star after it. Okay, she said. Let's win. James found out about the hearing date on a Thursday, the way he found out most things from her now. Not because she led with it, but because she'd started to let him ask the right questions. They were at Mason's corner table late morning when the rush had thinned. She told him while refilling his coffee. He listened without interrupting. When she was done, he said, 3 weeks is enough time to prepare. Reed thinks so. He's right. He paused. I'd like to be there. At the hearing. She looked at him. Not to do anything, he said quickly. Just there. If you want. She thought about what it would look like. James Calloway in a courtroom in Calloway County. The name on the walls of the county courthouse. The name on the deed to 7,000 acres of Texas land. She thought about how Derek would look at that and what his lawyer would make of it and whether it helped or complicated things. She thought about a man sitting in the third row of a school gymnasium holding grocery store flowers. I want, she said. He nodded. That was all. 2 days before the hearing, Derek came to Mason's alone. No Vanessa. No phone in his hand. He sat at table 3, and when Claire came to take his order, he didn't order anything. Can you sit down? He asked. Just 5 minutes. She looked at him. She looked at the other tables. She pulled out the chair across from him and sat, with her order pad in her hand and her back straight, and waited. He looked different without Vanessa. Smaller somehow. Not meaner, just smaller. The jacket was the same jacket, but something about the angle of his shoulders had changed. I don't want to fight, he said. You filed papers, she said. I know. He looked at the table. Vanessa thinks I'm trying to punish you. He was quiet for a moment. She might be right. Claire waited. She's a good kid, he said. Lily. I know she is, Claire said. He stopped. Something moved across his face that she hadn't seen there before. Something that might have been, under very different circumstances, regret. She got your stubbornness, she doesn't give up on things. No, Claire said, she doesn't. He looked up. I'm not trying to take her from you, I want you to know that. The lawyers, he shook his head. I wanted to scare you, I think. She held very still. That's not a good reason, she said. No, he said. It's not. She looked at him for a long moment. She thought about 6 years. She thought about the word mistake said in front of a 4-year-old. She thought about $3 on a 26 bill, and a letter in a cream envelope, and 2 years of texts that had all been trying to make her feel like she was still standing in a room that defined her. She thought about 7 pages of evidence that she didn't need to defend. Derek, she said, I'm not going to fight you out of spite. I'm going to fight you because Lily's life works, her school works, her home works. Everything she needs is here, and I will not let anyone use money to argue otherwise. She paused. But if you want to be her father, actually not on paper, you can be, without lawyers. She loves you. She shouldn't have to choose. He looked at her. She loves you, Claire said again and meant it, for Lily's sake, which was the only reason that mattered. He looked at the table for a long time. Then he said, I'll call the lawyer. He stood up. He put $20 on the table, which was, as far as she could tell, just the gesture and not the order, and walked out. She sat for a moment in the empty chair. Then she picked up the $20. She put it in her apron. She went back to work. Thomas Reed called at 4 that afternoon. Derek's attorney reached out, he said. They want to discuss a settlement. His terms: maintain current arrangement, add 1 weeknight dinner per week, increase summer parenting time by 2 weeks. He paused. My assessment: take it. It gives Lily more time with her father if she wants it. It doesn't disrupt her school routine, and it costs you nothing. Claire stood in the break room. What about the hearing? Cancel it, Reed said. This is the win, Claire, not the courthouse, this. She thought about it for exactly 30 seconds. Okay, she said. Good. A pause. He's not a terrible man, you know. Just one who got scared and made bad choices. Most people, Claire said, aren't terrible. They're just scared. Reed was quiet for a moment. James said you were smart, he said. She blinked. James talked to you about me. He called me after the first consultation, Reed said. He said, and I'm quoting, she's one of the most capable people I've ever met, and she deserves someone in her corner. A pause. I thought you should know that. She held the phone. Thank you, Tom, she said. She hung up. She stood in the break room for a moment. The mustard-colored walls, the 2-year-old calendar. She thought about capable. She thought about deserves. She thought about a man who had said these things to someone else, privately, without any expectation that she'd find out. Then she went back to her section. She had 5 tables waiting. The Saturday before Thanksgiving, James called at 8:47 a.m. What are you doing today? He asked. I have a half shift, she said. Done at noon. Then I was going to take Lily to the library and maybe the park if it's not too cold. A pause. Would you, both of you, want to come to the ranch after? She looked out the window. The November sky was pale and clear. The kind of day that looked cold but wasn't once the sun had been up for a few hours. "Lily will need to see the horses," she said. "That's the idea," he said. The Calloway Ranch sat 8 miles north of town on Old Highway 6, down a gravel road lined with mesquite trees that Claire counted on the way in, 23 of them, and then a gate with the ranch name in iron letters above it. Beyond the gate, land, real land, the kind that went to the horizon in every direction and said clearly that it had been here before everything else and intended to outlast it. The house was not what she'd expected. She'd built a picture from the name, something grand, something architectural, something with columns. What she found was a house that had been old before it was renovated and still showed both. Limestone walls, deep-set windows, a porch that wrapped 3 sides, a garden to the east that was dormant now but had clearly been tended by someone who knew what they were doing. It was beautiful in the way of things that have been lived in and cared for over a long time. James met them at the fence. Lily was out of the car before it fully stopped. "The horses," she said, as both greeting and agenda. "Sugar and Clover are in the south paddock," he said. "Patience is required." "I have patience," Lily said, already moving. "Walk," Claire said. Lily walked. Quickly. James fell into step beside Claire and they followed. Sugar was a bay mare, 14 years old, with the temperament of someone who had seen everything and could not be surprised by it. She accepted Lily's presence at the fence with a slow, dignified turn of her head and then permitted, without enthusiasm, the piece of apple James produced from his jacket pocket. Lily fed Sugar the apple with both hands, shaking slightly, and then turned to Claire with a face that contained more joy than could be reasonably contained. "Mom," she said, "I fed a horse." "I saw," Claire said. "A real one." "A real one," Claire agreed. Clover, a smaller gray with more personality and less dignity than Sugar, arrived at the fence and inserted herself between Sugar and the apple situation, which caused Lily to laugh, which caused Clover to startle backward slightly, which caused Lily to apologize to Clover directly and personally. James watched this. He watched it the way he watched things, fully, without performing the watching. Claire stood beside him at the fence and watched too, her daughter, talking to a horse, the November sun on her upturned face, the white puffs of breath in the cold air, the pure and uncomplicated happiness of an 8-year-old who had gotten exactly what she came for. "She's going to ask about riding lessons," James said quietly. "She's already calculated a reasonable schedule," Claire said. "I saw the notepad." He almost smiled. More than almost. The smile was there, full and real, carrying more in it than just amusement. "James," she said. "Yeah? Tell me what Catherine's favorite part of this place was." He was quiet for a moment, looking at the paddock, the horses, the land. "Right here," he said. "This fence, she used to say." He paused. The good kind of pause, the kind where the memory is doing the talking. "She used to say you could tell everything about a person by how they stood at a fence with an animal, whether they were patient, whether they were present." Claire looked at Lily, who was now attempting to explain her horse drawings to Clover by gesture. "What did she say about you?" Claire asked. He looked at her. "She said I was present," he said. "She said that was the thing she loved most about me, that when I was with her I was actually there." Claire held his gaze. "You still are," she said. He showed them the barn. Old wood and hay smell, the particular warmth of a space where large animals have lived long enough to heat it through their presence alone. 14 stalls, 12 of them occupied. He walked Lily down the line and introduced each horse by name, and the names were, as advertised, not entirely defensible. There was one called Earl, one called Duchess, which was clearly ironic, one called simply the Senator, and one, a rangy chestnut with opinions, called Grievance. "Grievance," Lily said. "He complains," James said. "About what?" "Everything, timing, weather, grain, he's got a whole list." Lily looked at Grievance. Grievance looked at Lily. Some kind of assessment occurred. "I respect that," Lily said finally. Claire pressed her hand to her mouth. They stayed through the afternoon. James made coffee in a kitchen that smelled like wood smoke and old timber, and Lily ate 2 of the cookies James had clearly bought specifically from the bakery on Elm because they had sprinkles. She did her homework at the kitchen table, the spelling words and then a math worksheet and then the reading assignment, which she performed out loud because the audience seemed to want it, and the audience, which was James, appeared genuinely interested in the adventures of the chapter book's protagonist, a 12-year-old inventor. At 4:30, Lily fell asleep on the couch. She didn't announce this. She simply listed sideways over the armrest and was gone. with the absolute conviction of a child who trusts where she is. James got a blanket from the chest by the door and put it over her with the careful, practiced quiet of someone doing something for the second time. Then he stopped, because there was no second time. He had no child. He had done this once for Catherine, in the last months, and he hadn't done it since. Claire saw his hands go still on the edge of the blanket. She crossed the room and stood beside him. He didn't move. He was looking at Lily's face, the dark lashes, the hand curled under her cheek, the absolute peacefulness. "James," she said softly. He straightened. He kept his face turned away for a moment. She put her hand on his back. Not a question, just a hand, warm through the chambray of his shirt. He exhaled. She felt it through her palm. 3 years of a particular kind of weight. Moving. "She's incredible," he said. His voice was steady. Almost. "She is," Claire said. He turned. He looked at her. She was close enough that she could see the line of silver at his temples she'd never noticed before, the small scar below his left eye, the particular quality of his gaze that she'd been learning to read for weeks, and was still learning. That gray that was neither cold nor dramatic but simply honest, open in the way of someone who has been through enough loss to stop pretending. "I want to tell you something," he said. "Okay. I came to Mason's every Thursday morning for 7 years, he said. It's on the route to the supplier. And it was just coffee. It was just routine." He paused. 3 weeks ago, a man tried to make you small in front of a room full of people and you stood there and got taller instead. And I don't know how to explain it except that I felt. He stopped. I felt awake, for the first time in a long time, like I'd been moving through fog. And it lifted. Claire looked at him. "You left a note on a napkin," she said. "I left a note on a napkin," he agreed. Slight smile. "It's possible I didn't think it through." "No," she said. "It was—" She stopped. "I kept it. You know that. Lily told me. Lily tells everyone everything. She told Mrs. Terrence." He agreed. Mrs. Terrence apparently approved. Claire laughed, a real one, surprised out of her, and she pressed her hand over her mouth the way she always did when something caught her off guard. He looked at her laugh with that unguarded expression. The man who'd forgotten he was allowed to feel things, feeling them anyway. "James," she said when she'd composed herself. "Yeah." She thought about how to say it. All the ways it could be said carefully, with qualifications, with the appropriate armor of someone who'd been hurt, and had reason to move slowly. She thought about the ways she'd kept everything at exactly the right distance for exactly the right amount of time. She looked at Lily, asleep on the couch. She looked at the kitchen where 2 coffee cups were still warm. She looked at the barn through the window, the horses in the fading afternoon light, the land going to the horizon. She looked at him. "I don't want to be afraid of this," she said. He was very still. "I've been careful for 3 years," she said. "Careful with everything. With money and with trust and with—" She stopped. "I'm tired of being so careful that I don't let anything good in." "You let me in," he said. "You were persistent," she said. "I sent 1 text about hot chocolate. You sent 3 texts about bad horse names." The corner of his mouth moved. "I did do that." She took a breath. "I don't know what this is yet," she said. "I know it's something. I know that you—" She stopped. Started again. "I know that you show up and mean it." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, so carefully, the way you do something you've thought about, with both hands worth of intention in one gesture. "That's all I'm trying to do," he said. She leaned forward and kissed him. Soft. Brief. The kind of first kiss that doesn't announce itself with drama, but simply arrives. 2 people who have been moving slowly towards something, and then, without deciding to, get there. She pulled back. He looked at her. That brightness in his gray eyes again. That specific unbracing. "Okay?" she said very quietly. "Yeah," he said. From the couch, Lily made a small sound in her sleep. They both looked at her. She had not woken up. She was still entirely, peacefully asleep, but there was a very small smile on her face. Claire looked at James. "Did she—" she started. "She was faking," he said. "Lily Henderson," Claire said. From the couch, with her eyes still closed. "I was asleep." "You were not," Claire said. "I was thinking with my eyes closed," Lily said. "That's almost the same thing." She opened one eye, then the other. She looked at her mother. She looked at James. She looked at the 2 of them standing close, his hand still near her face. She appeared to reach a conclusion. "Good," she said, simply, with complete satisfaction. Then she pulled the blanket up to her chin and closed her eyes again. "I'm going back to thinking," she announced. Quietly. The afternoon stretched into early evening. James lit the fireplace, the real kind, a stone hearth that took up most of the east wall of the living room, that Catherine had insisted on when they renovated, and James had never once regretted. The light from it moved across the room in the way that firelight moves, warm and uneven and impossibly comfortable. Lily had relocated to the rug in front of the fireplace where she'd found a book from the shelf, a field guide to North American horses, worn at the spine, and was reading it with focused attention, occasionally sharing facts with the room. "A horse's heart weighs 11 pounds, she announced. "Is that a lot?" James asked. "Compared to humans, yes," Lily said. "We only have 10 or 11 ounces. She considered this. "Horses love more, probably. Proportionally." James looked at Claire. Claire looked at James. Neither of them said anything. They didn't need to. The fireplace was burning low when Claire carried Lily, asleep for real this time, dead weight in the absolute way of deeply sleeping children, out to James's truck. He'd offered to drive them back. The buses didn't run this late on Saturday, and the town was 20 minutes south, and the November night was cold enough to see their breath. Lily didn't wake up for the transfer from arms to back seat. She curled against the door and was gone again. Roger, the field guide, tucked under her arm. James had pressed it on her when she admired it, and she'd accepted it with the same gravity she'd accepted the horse commission. In the front, the heater ran warm and the dark pressed at the windows and the road was quiet. James drove the way he always drove, careful without being slow. After a while, he said, "I want to tell you something about Catherine." She looked at him. "Her family ranch was in Georgia," he said. "Red clay. Her grandmother grew a garden there that everyone said couldn't grow anything." He paused. "She used to say, her grandmother used to say." He stopped. Claire went very still. "What did she say?" she asked, though something in her chest already knew. "You're not defined by the land you're standing on," James said quietly. "You're defined by what you grow." The truck moved through the dark. "My grandmother," Claire said slowly, said almost the same thing. He glanced at her. The dashboard light was dim. His face was in half shadow. "Ruth Henderson," she said. "She had a garden in Georgia. Red clay. She grew tomatoes and pole beans." He was quiet. "What was Catherine's grandmother's name?" she asked. "Ruth," he said. "Ruth Caldwell." The truck was very quiet. The heater ran. The road went south through the dark November land. In the back seat, Lily slept with the horse field guide under her arm. Claire looked out the windshield. She thought about Georgia red clay. She thought about two women with the same name and the same impossible gardens and the same certainty about the same true thing, said in almost the same words across years and distance, as if the idea was simply true, and kept finding its way into the mouths of women who needed to say it. She thought about a napkin that said, "He's wrong about you," and a zipper pocket that held a photograph of a woman who had grown something from nothing. "Tell me about Ruth Caldwell," she said. "She died when Catherine was 17, James said. But Catherine talked about her all the time. She said Ruth was the most certain person she'd ever known. Said she had a way of looking at something that wasn't growing and seeing what it was going to become." Claire turned to look at him. He was watching the road, but she could see in the angle of his jaw, in the set of his shoulders, that he was feeling the specific weight of this. What it meant that two women had said the same true thing to two different people who had found their way to each other on a Tuesday morning in a diner in Cowboy County, Texas. "She would have liked you," James said. "Ruth, she had a rule about people." He glanced at Claire. "She said the ones worth keeping are the ones who clean the corners." Claire made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite a cry, but was somehow both. "Your couch," she said. "Your couch," he agreed. The lights of town appeared ahead. The slow orange glow of Cowboy County against the dark sky. Familiar and ordinary, and exactly enough. He pulled up in front of the garage apartment. The porch light was on. The live oak moved in the wind. He got out and opened the back door and lifted Lily with the ease of someone who has carried things for years and knows how to carry them. She didn't wake up. She made a small sound and settled against his shoulder. He carried her up the path. At the door, Claire unlocked it and led him to Lily's room. He set her down, gently onto the bed that Claire pulled back the covers for and stepped back. In the dim light of the hallway, he looked at the drawings on the wall above Lily's pillow. The horses, the mermaids, Dumbo's cousin, and now Roger Mark II with his wings, and beside him, newly placed, a sketch of sugar and clover at the fence, done that afternoon in borrowed pencil. He stood there a moment. Then he came back into the hallway and Claire pulled Lily's door mostly closed. They stood in the narrow hallway of the small apartment. "Thank you," she said. "Not just for tonight. For all of it." He looked at her. He reached into his jacket pocket. He held out his hand. In his palm, the cocktail napkin, folded twice. "He's wrong about you in his own handwriting." She stared at it. "I kept mine too," he said. "I wrote it on 2 napkins. One for you." He paused. "One to remind myself." She looked up at him. "Remind yourself of what?" she asked. "That doing the right thing is still right," he said, "even when you don't know what it leads to." She took the napkin from his hand. She held it and her own, side by side. 2 napkins. Same words. Same handwriting. One that had lived in her purse for 3 weeks beside her grandmother's photo. One that had lived. She was learning. In his jacket pocket the same way. She looked at the 2 of them in her hands. She folded them together, once, then again, and put them both in the zipper pocket. Her grandmother's photo, her social security card, 2 napkins with 4 words, the things that mattered. "Same time Thursday?" she said. His eyes were bright in the dim hallway. "Same time Thursday," he said. He put his hat on. He'd retrieved it from the truck, and the brim shadowed his face, and he looked exactly like himself, a man who'd been carrying something heavy for a long time and had just, without ceremony, set part of it down. He went down the path. She stood in the doorway. This time when he got to the truck, he looked back. Just once. Brief. She lifted her hand. He got in the truck. He drove away slowly, the taillights going red down the street and then turning north on Route 7, toward Old Highway 6, toward 14 horses with bad names and a stone fireplace and 7,000 acres of Texas land. She stood in the doorway until she couldn't see the taillights anymore. Then she went inside. She checked on Lily, still sleeping, the horse field guide still under her arm, the plastic stars glowing their faint green above her. She smoothed the blanket. She sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. "This one can run faster and also jump better. His name is Roger." She looked at the drawings on the wall. Sugar and clover at the fence sketched in pencil. Roger with his wings. The 4 figures in the field. She got up. She went to the kitchen. She sat at the table under the yellow light. She did the math, for the last time, in this particular way. $155 in the account. The custody situation settled. A half-shift Tuesday, a full shift Thursday. A call from Reed on Monday to finalize. A recital dress hanging on the back of Lily's door that had been made by hand and was perfect. The math was the same, but it wasn't the whole story anymore. The whole story was, she had Lily. She had 7 pages of evidence that her daughter was thriving. She had Mrs. Terrence downstairs with strong opinions and good coffee. She had Jose at the grill making conversation about his cousin. She had a friend who'd showed up with 3 hot chocolates because 3 people mattered. She had 2 napkins in the same pocket as her grandmother's photo. She was starting to believe herself, fully. The person her grandmother had seen, the one who grew things in red clay that wasn't supposed to grow anything. She turned off the kitchen light. She went to the window and looked out at the live oak, stubborn with its leaves, still holding on in November. She thought about 2 women named Ruth in Georgia, tending impossible gardens, saying the same true thing to 2 different people across years and miles. She thought, maybe that's how it works. Not fate, exactly. Not miracle. Just this. 2 people shaped by the same essential wisdom, the same knowledge that what you grow from hard ground is worth more than anything that comes easy. 2 people finding each other in a diner on a Tuesday morning, not because the universe arranged it, but because they were both in their separate and necessary ways still standing. She looked at the oak. She looked at the street. She looked at the stars. Real ones, not plastic, the actual November stars through the actual window. You're not defined by the room you're standing in, baby girl. She knew. She'd always known. She just needed someone else to know it too. She went to bed. She slept. And in Lily's room on the wall above the pillow, Roger spread his wings over all of it. The drawings and the stars and the small sleeping girl who had decided at age 8, with the full authority of someone who understands how the important things work, that the people worth keeping were the ones who showed up and meant it. The end.